Hello and welcome everybody to New Earth Consciousness. I'm sitting here with Karen Docherty, and she is a psychic medium and a spiritual mentor. And so I'm really excited to have her here to dive into this topic. So welcome, Karen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tanya. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, so you are really passionate about mediumship. You're able to connect with ones that have left this earth plane, and so maybe talk to us a little bit about how you found yourself in this type of work.
Yeah, that is such a good question. When people ask me this, I sometimes have to kind of revert back into my mind from childhood because it was really back then that I became aware of the spirit world. Now, obviously, not at a young age knowing about mediumship or what mediumship meant. But when I was younger, age 3, 4, round about that age, I remember vividly seeing spirit people. I knew they were from the other place, I used to call it, not knowing what that was, but I knew they weren't physical. And that really carried on through my childhood and until my kind of teenage years. And it was when I became just before teenage, maybe about 12, I started to really take an interest in mediumship. So I would read mediumship books and watch anything that started to come on TV at that time. And there wasn't a lot back then. And then I just really felt so drawn to it. But again, not knowing that I was a medium, just thinking that I knew about it, and that I was drawn and I had a passion for it. And then, really, as time went on, a lot of the communication I would get from the spirit world started to become a little bit overwhelming for me, so much so that at night time when I would go to my bed, I used to kind of dread it a little bit because I used to hear lots of voices, everybody speaking at once, and it became a little bit confusing. And on that, I started to speak to a local medium who was part of a spiritualist church that I attended. And she said, well, you're a medium. You have to develop this. And I said, I'm not a medium. I can't be a medium because I had such a huge respect for mediums. And I just never thought that that was me. Anyway, she invited me along to a development group, and I went. And from the minute I sat down within that group, it was like the penny dropped, and I just felt like I was home. Everything made sense. And really, from then on, I just started to develop and work with the ability.
Interesting. So I feel like a lot of some people they say, that they were aware that they had this gift at a young age, and then at some point it gets turned off, but that didn't happen for you. It was just on and continued to turn on until it became too much, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think what happens is life gets busy and you're at different points of your life of development. So I can't say that it happened every day for me. It was, and there were times where it was less than before. But really what's happening there is as you develop through your life, things come into play, like depending on where you are in your life when it's happening. So my teenage years were busy and then obviously leaving school and getting work and things. At these times, it was probably less, but it didn't ever go away.
Interesting. And so when you would receive communications before, let's say, getting mentored by another medium, what were the communications that you were receiving spontaneous? Like it wasn't like something that you were thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to receive some messages right now. It wasn't, there was not an intentional act that you would do. It would just happen spontaneously.
Yeah, that's right. It was very spontaneous and it wasn't something I was asking for, but at the same time, because I felt such a strong connection to spirit, I enjoyed it. So I suppose in that sense, I was open for that, but it was spontaneous. It wasn't like I was going trying to get messages for people or communication. It would just happen if I was sitting with a friend or out somewhere or whatever it might be. I would just suddenly become aware of the spirit. So yeah, more spontaneous for me in those times.
Hmm. And so then when you joined the spiritualist church and you started to get mentorship or guidance, like I mean, I know you said you felt like you were at home and things started to make sense. So after that, what shifted? What became easier?
Well, actually, what's funny about it is the minute I felt that and then started to attend that circle, which we call it a development circle, and I attended it every week. And when I first started to attend it, it's like it stopped. And I remember saying to my teacher at the time, "Look, I don't know if I should be coming here now because I'm really not getting everything the way that I did before." And she had said, "Of course you're not, because Spirit have got your attention now. Now it's to put the hard graft in. You've got to put the work in now to start understanding your communication with the spirit world." So it actually became more difficult in a way, like not as maybe spontaneous and maybe not as natural or as noisy as I used to say or busy, but it became more disciplined, and it was a practice then, and it was starting to understand how this would unfold and how I could kind of link in with it and receive what I needed to receive.
Mm. Was your family aware that you had this gift?
My grandmother was. My grandmother said since a young age for me that I would bring spirit with me. She used to say, "Karen brings spirit wherever she goes." And I used to tell her stories. I seen a lady in the kitchen last night and she'd say, "Oh, yeah, the dead don't harm you." She wasn't fazed by it. She wasn't bothered. And it was her that really understood my sensitivity. And I think looking back, I was so glad of that because you don't feel normal. You feel like you're different, but you can't understand why, and you don't understand why you're so sensitive about things or sensitive to energy. So that really helped me because she made it normal for me. But my parents and friends or family, they all just thought, "Oh, yeah, Karen's a little bit." My mum used to say she's from the moon. We got Karen from the moon. And I've got two sisters, and I'm the middle sister, and neither of them were like that. So I think for my parents, it was a little bit like, what's going on? But my grandmother certainly made it feel normal.
Interesting. So your grandmother had an understanding. Do you have a sense that maybe this gift was something that was in your lineage or part of your lineage?
Yeah, my grandmother was definitely mediumist. People used to say she had healing hands, like she would put her hands
Mm.
on people and help heal them. And she used to do tea leaf readings. And I remember sitting in her kitchen when I was maybe about 3 or 4 years old, watching what she did. And I remember her telling people to turn the cup 3 times and she would read the tea leaves. So she definitely had that in her, although she didn't do it actively. But her sister was actually a medium, and I didn't find that out until years later. She was actually an altered states medium, and she did go out and work with her abilities. So it's definitely on my grandmother's side.
Wow, fascinating. So I'm curious, in your bio, it says that you offer a contemporary approach to psychic and mediumship based on traditional principles. I'm curious, what does that mean, traditional principles?
Well, mediumship's a very sacred thing. Working with spirit, even being in connection with spirit's sacred. And I just feel like now, although we all have platforms, social media, TV, it's very like mediumship's like a worldwide thing. People are so aware of it now. In years gone by, that was never the case. But because of that, I feel like it's been very diluted as well. And people seem to look at it as entertainment now. Or, you just consult a medium, you don't decide for yourself what's happening in your life. You just have to go to a medium and get someone to tell you.
So you say that in your bio, it states that you have a contemporary approach to psychic work and mediumship based on traditional principles. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like nowadays mediumship is so out there, right? We all know about mediumship. We've watched it on TV, on social media, and it's everywhere, which is a good thing because it's really getting the message out that it exists and that we all have this connection. But at the same time, it dilutes the message for me. It's become more of an entertainment. It's become more of a, you go to a psychic for answers. You don't kind of go within yourself for answers anymore. People go to mediums or psychics. And whilst that's good and we can give that guidance, the message of the spirit is more than that. And the traditional mediumship is about healing. It's about bringing healing forward for both the spirit world and for the people that are left behind. And it's bringing that evidence that life goes on and that life's eternal. And then that then creates this question within people's mind of, well, if that's the truth and that's eternal, then we are eternal. And so we can connect to our higher self, which is what helps us through this life. So traditionally, mediumship was practiced in that way. It was a vocation and it was something that you were born to do or drawn to do and do it for service. As opposed to let's do it for entertainment and see how famous people get. Now, I don't have any issue with that at all, as long as the mediumship's authentic and whatever. I think if it reaches more people, it's amazing. But I
Mm.
just think that it also creates the other side of it. So for me, I know that mediumship has to be, it has to have made progress to be in this modern world because mediumship from the 1900s isn't going to be the same as what's needed now.
Mm.
But I think the basic traditions should always be there.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Um, so what I'm curious how do you receive messages? Uh how do you notice and interpret signs from the spirit world?
It actually happens differently all the time. So when I'm receiving information and evidence and communication, it comes through me seeing things visually, hearing things, feeling things, or just knowing information, or almost like the thought just comes into my mind and that's the information. The connection's always strong, meaning like if I have a father in the spirit world, then it's his story, it's his take on things, his interpretation that I'm linking in with. But if he can communicate more by letting me hear him, that's how he will do it. Whereas a lady might come in and she can communicate more by letting me feel things or seeing things. So it really just depends on the communicator and it depends how well I'm blending with them in order to get the evidence.
Hmm. Interesting. It, it sounds similar in some ways to family constellations work, where you're able to tune in to different family members and able to feel um, what it is that they're feeling given the situation. Um, I Gosh, what did I want to say about that? So um, do you experience, like, when the communications come through, does your body receive like impressions or sensations or things like that? So it's very much like a
It
body experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's called mental mediumship, really. There's mental mediumship and then there's physical mediumship, and it's two different things.
Oh, interesting.
Mental mediumship is where the spirit world always are going to work through your mind. So your mind has to interpret all the information. So you're using your mind to do that, but they can still allow your body to feel things. So if somebody passes of a heart attack, I might feel that heart attack like it's happening to me. Or if someone's been in an accident, quite often I can feel the sensations of what happened within my own body or on my own body. So they will use every aspect of your being through your mediumship, which is why it's important to have developed your mediumship to a point where you understand what's taken place. Because I had early on for my development, I had a terrible experience where I was just sitting in circle at the time. It might have only been a few weeks into my development, and I suddenly felt like I had a brain tumor. And
Mm.
it sounds crazy when I say it like that, but at the time it was the realest thing that I was going through. And I stopped what I was doing in the circle and I said to my teacher, I'm going to have to go home. I'm not well. And she said, No, no, it's okay. And she obviously knew what was taking place. And I
Mm.
said, No, I think something's wrong within my head. I think I've got a brain tumor or it's going to hemorrhage. I just couldn't work out what was going on, but I could feel it. And she said, No, no, it's spirit. They've come too close. We'll ask them to stand back. And she was very calm. and I couldn't calm down. I went away home. I got so upset. She didn't want me to drive, but I went home and I called the doctor the next morning and I said, I think there's something going on in the head. And he examined me and looked in my eyes, and he was like, there's nothing there, nothing there. So it was about maybe 2 weeks later that I carried this feeling. And we were doing practice readings for people that were coming in. And this lady sat in front of me, and straight away our husband was there, and he had had a brain hemorrhage. And I knew straight away it was him. And as soon as I gave that evidence and that message and communication, it cleared from me. So it was a very big lesson for me early days that yes, spirit will make you feel things, put impressions upon your body. And if you don't understand that, or you've not developed enough to understand it, or you don't have a good teacher that will help, it can be quite frightening.
Hmm. So in that experience, did you then subsequently, when that sort of situation happened again, did you have like how did you approach it differently? Like, is there a way to maybe separate yourself from that and be able to get it out of your body and not, take it in so deeply?
Yeah, absolutely. You know that you can discern what's you and what's not. So if that happens, which it does now daily when I'm working with spirit and I can feel things all the time, I know it's not me. And it's again having that confidence to know your own body. I will always tell my students, you have to get to know your own body sensations. You have to know yourself, how you move, how you hold yourself, because the spirit world will use you at the same time, bringing that evidence forward to get their message out. So it's really about knowing yourself and being strong within your power and your own energy to discern the difference, which I can do now.
Hmm. Now, so I have a background in Waldorf education, and part of our train, we studied Rudolf Steiner, and I remember reading something by him that talked about souls that have departed, and that when we when we speak to them, that it actually is nourishing for them. I remember him saying something like that, that they need our attention. And so I'm curious, you in your bio it said that the loved ones on the other side need healing as well. So what does that look like for you in your work?
Well, when someone passes away, dependent on how they pass, you'll get people obviously that pass quickly, unexpectedly, maybe in a traumatic way. And I often feel that when I've been communicating with spirit, there is a need for them to get their message out or to speak to their loved one to say, I'm okay, or, if they didn't get a chance to talk before they passed, or even if they did, even if it was like a deterioration, they still have a need to let their loved ones know, I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm okay. And when that communication takes place between the spirit world and the loved one here, I can feel the relief and the emotional healing that takes place on both sides. And that's what I mean by healing, because
Mm.
when we go to the spirit world, we all know where we are. We are all back home in the spirit world. We know this. Spirit's very intelligent, high intelligence, more than what our mind can understand. So we know that we're back home, but that doesn't mean that we don't miss our loved ones. And it doesn't mean that we don't worry about them, or we're watching over them and they're still in grief. So it just gives a bit of emotional healing to both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's not so much that when someone departs that they have unresolved issues from their life that they're carrying into the spirit world, that they're still needing that healing.
No, I often think, even if someone is carrying emotional um, disturbances within themselves, or emotional um, conflicts or something, I that's for the spirit to sort out. I know that you hear a lot about, and this is just my opinion, other people will disagree.
Mm.
But when I hear about rescue circles and earthbound spirits and people that haven't crossed over properly because they can't, that's not something that sits with me, because I know the intelligence of spirit and I know that we all cross over to spirit. But yes, they might have a period, I suppose, of time. There's no time in the spirit world, but in our mind, it's time where they have to kind of go through their emotional self as well and through their life review, which can take extra from them if that's what they need to do.
Okay, interesting. Um, so a question, what can you say to people who are interested in, say, developing their intuitive abilities? What are some ways or practices that people can, I guess, be involved with to fine tune that?
I think the biggest thing that I would say, or the strongest thing that I could say, is to find a place where you can center yourself first and connect with your higher self. Because until you know that connection and what that feels like, then you can't expect to connect with the spirit world and know what's going on. So meditation's a big thing. I know some people will say, oh, I can't meditate. My mind doesn't switch off. I'm too busy. And I agree. I mean, my mind is the kind of mind that doesn't really switch off. But you don't have to switch your mind off to meditate. Meditation really is getting yourself into a place almost like a daydream where you can kind of go into the quiet of yourself. And if you can do that, maybe some people will walk in nature for that, or some people will sit with their eyes closed, or some people might listen to music. It's going to be different for everyone, but getting yourself into that kind of daydream state, if you like, is what is going to teach you that that is your connection. And once you can practice that, so a bit like a muscle at the gym, you have to keep working out and getting it stronger. But once you learn your own connection to your own spirit, then it's about expanding that and asking spirit to come and meet you and asking spirit to help you with it and guide you with it. And everyone has their guides and their helpers and their spirit team working with them as well. But meditation or centering yourself is definitely the best one to work on.
hmm And so you mentioned guides. What's your experience with your guides? How do you connect with them? How do you know that they're there? What's your experience?
It's a funny one in a way, because when you first come into mediumship or you're first aware of it, I feel like everyone talks about guides and you've got to know your guide, and everybody talks about this one guide, like my guide said this. And what I learned and what I felt actually from early on, without anybody telling me, it just resonated with me that I'm not going to go looking for my guides. If my guides and helpers and spirit team come up, then that's what will happen. I really was someone that just let it naturally unfold in that sense. Now, because I've let it naturally unfold, yes, I know some of my guides and helpers that come in. Certain ones will come in at certain times. I'm aware of maybe four or five and the characters of them and the communication. And yes, I have one main guide that I seem to connect with through when I do altered states work with my mediumship. And so you build a relationship with your guides. Once you start getting to know them, you can build that relationship up. But I get asked a lot from students, who are my guides? And I always say, I can't tell you who your guides are. You have to discover your guides. Because number one, I don't have evidence of that. I can say to someone, oh, you've got a doctor who's your guide and he lived in such a year or whatever, but where's the proof? I can't provide that. So for me, I'm like, just you discover your guides. So again, encouraging the student to allow that to unfold. But once it does, believe it and feel it and let it resonate, and then kind of build your relationship up. And it's about being active in that. I have conversations with my guides, meaning I will chat away to them like I would be chatting to someone that was in the same room as me. And I don't always get an answer and I don't always hear them answering me back, but I know that I'm able to kind of bounce ideas off of them and just kind of put it out there.
hmm And so would you say that, so for people, I mean, I know of some people that, they'll say, oh, well, my guide said da, 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 and it'll be a whole paragraph of a communication. Um, but I feel like a lot of people don't have that experience. Would you say that for those that can't feel that, does it just come through like an intuition or um, for example, I remember one time it was I'll never forget it. My son was about 3 or 4. No, he was 4. And there was this big ladder. It went up into this loft. And I happened to be passing by and I knew he was upstairs and he'd gone up and down the stairs all the time. And for some whatever reason, it was almost like that still quiet voice that said, be ready to catch him. He's gonna fall, And sure enough, he was falling, and I was able to grab him by the ankle, like literally he was falling head first, and I grabbed him by the ankle, and I just thought, that was just, it was just like this little still voice. It's just like, look up, something bad's gonna happen right now, if you don't pay
Mhm.
attention. So, yeah, listening to those nudges and it's true. I feel like, we live in such a culture that doesn't really support intuition. We're very much into science and um, you know, logical thinking and whatnot. That sometimes
Mhm.
these things we override those intuitions.
Absolutely. And I think as well, people don't understand that we can be our own guide, if that makes sense, because we are connected to our spirit, right? So we are spirit in human form, having a human experience. So everything that comes with that is human and material in the material world. But our spirit is always present. And quite often, when people say, my guide told me this or my guide told me that, quite often what's happening is it's your own higher self that's telling you that. It's your own spirit that's telling you that.
Mm,
And because it seems to come from a different place, people don't understand. So the mind's going to say, well, that wasn't you because you don't talk like that, or you wouldn't think that, or that thought wouldn't have crossed your mind. You weren't, it was random. So
mhm,
then they kind of put it to an outside personality, if you like, or someone must have told them. But quite often what's happening is it is their own spirit that is speaking to them. And I think that, if we understood how powerful we really are and what our connection to the higher self is, it would bring more understanding on the intuition. It would bring more understanding on the psychic senses because we're all psychic. Every one of us is psychic
mm,
to a level. Some people will use their psychic senses, and other people will just say it's intuition or a nudge or a hunch or whatever. But it's all from the psychic senses, which is connected to the spirit.
mm,
So if people got to know more of that and understand it, then even for decision making in their own lives and things, they would be able to kind of tune into that and it would help them.
mhm, mhm. So I'm curious, how do you work with people? Like, what are the different ways?
So there's psychic readings, which are more about linking in with the person's spirit. So basically, if they're coming for guidance or there's something going on in their life, I will sit with that client and I will link in directly with them, their auric field, their spirit, and be able to give them things from the past, the present, and the potential for
Mm,
things that are coming. So that's more of a psychic reading if somebody's needing that kind of help in life. And then there's mediumship, which is communicating with spirit on their behalf and bringing through that communication from those on the other side. So that would be evidential mediumship. And then I do teaching and mentoring as well.
okay, amazing. So, if anybody wants to learn more about Karen, you just go to karendocherty.com. It'll be here in
Yeah.
the
hmm
links in the notes here. And yeah, is there anything more you'd like to share before we sign off?
Yeah, I would just like everyone to that's listening that has an interest in this subject to understand that really mediumship is seen as this, rare connection or rare ability, or some people will call it a gift. And it is. I'm very blessed to do what I do, and I absolutely love doing what I do. But really, we all have something. We all have that power within us. We all have somewhere that we can connect to that will help us kind of get through life, you know, having that inner sat nav, I call it, which is the voice of your spirit.
Mm.
And so I would say to people to remember that for themselves, you know, it's not always relying on someone else to give them that. But if they do reach out to mediums, you know, just make sure the medium's authentic. You know, I like that people have got good reputations, or they're recommended, or you can look into someone's credentials really, and not that there's a specific credential for it being a medium. You know, it's a very natural thing. But just if you're ever sitting with a medium, make sure it feels authentic, make sure it's something that resonates, make sure the medium's bringing you evidential mediumship. So it's not them just telling you general stuff. It's actually got to make sense to you,
Mm.
because that connection to your loved ones is amazing when you get it. Truly
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's incredible. Karen, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us your gift, and thanks to everyone watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.